Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I was just kind of going through some of my old video game stuff, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through and just look inside some of these boxes that I have for some old school retro video games. So for definition, for me, old school is probably anything N64 and earlier, and I do have like a couple of Game Boy Advance games as well, so I thought I may as well just kind of show those off as well. Now, none of these I'm not necessarily saying are complete in box, but I thought it'd be kind of cool. And I also have some stuff off to the side here that I want to go through as well, including one game that I haven't opened up the box and actually held the cartridge in my hand for probably 15 years now at this point in time. So it'll be interesting to see what that's going to look like over, after all that time. It's been stored in dry places and everything like that, so hopefully there won't be too much damage, but we'll see what happens. So again, I thought it'd just be sort of a fun, quick little video, and so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with my my two boxed Super Nintendo games, and so what I have here is Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. And I am missing the manual, I do know that much. I think it was packed away in a bag, but I don't know what happened to that bag when I moved a long time ago. But I do have the box, and it's actually in pretty decent shape, considering. And I actually, it's funny because I had this is the original box that I got with my original Super Nintendo, and when I sold my Super Nintendo and all the games, this box for some odd reason was tucked away in my closet, and the cartridge was out. But anyway, but I still ended up having the box saved, which is really cool, because when I was a few years ago, when I bought my second Super Nintendo, which I still have, although it's packed away in my closet, I got the cartridge for Donkey Kong Country, but I didn't have anything else to go with it. But I remembered that I actually had this box, so I pulled this box out from when I had moved away from home the very first time, and threw the cartridge in here. So again, let's just have a quick look, I guess, at the box. And I love Super Nintendo boxes. I really wish I kept my original collection, because I had a few other boxes as well. I had the Super Mario Kart collector's not a million copy seller thing in the box. I had Star Fox, the original Star Fox, in the box. But again, this is just really cool. And so just open it up, and it's got this just the cardboard thing in there. Like I said, I don't have the original instruction manual, but I still have the consumer information and precautions booklet. And I have the Don't Slip Up, Join the Club Today and Receive Donkey Kong Country Player's Guide for free, which came as a little poster sort of thing, insert. Join the Nintendo Power Super Power Club now and get a free Donkey Kong Country Player's Guide. Let's have a look here. There's probably got to be a, get this by a certain date, but Canadian residents pay $25, so yeah, so not so free for me as a Canadian, but still pretty cool. So like I said, I got those, and the cartridge itself, I don't have the little dust thing that went over top of it, but it's not looking too bad. You can see a little bit of discoloration between the front and the back sides, but I think that's something that's relatively common. I did play this on the Super Nintendo, so it is an authentic copy of Donkey Kong Country. There's no chicanery or anything like that. Just a little bit of color fading, which I thought was interesting. But so there we go, and it's probably been about a good 6 or 8 years. Probably been about 6 years, maybe 7, since the last time I pulled this out. So the next one I got here is NBA Jam Tournament Edition. I actually bought this from Rainbow's End in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. It's a really great store. It has basically everything in there. And it cost me $4 for a boxed copy of one of my favorite sports games of all time. I remember every year for my birthday, I'd have one of my friends over, stay the night, and we would play this for hours, just, you know, pushing the other players around, trying to, you know, shatter the glass, and it was just so much fun. I think we always end up being on the same team, but it was just a lot of fun. I love this game. I had the original NBA Jam with my original Super Nintendo, but you know, Tournament Edition is, in my opinion, the better version. And whoop, that has someone's information on there, so I'm not going to show that off. But inside, it actually has the poster and the instruction booklet. So for $4, I got what I would consider to be definitely a complete in-box game. So it has all the control information. I mean, it's not in the greatest shape, but again, I paid $4 for this. So what more do you really want? And you know, I left that price sticker on for a reason. It does suck that there's like masking tape on the box, but for me, it's one of those things. I think it kind of tells a bit of a story, and I think that's pretty cool. So let's have a look at this poster. I don't think I've ever looked at this one. This is one of the cool things that I wish video games nowadays still did. Let's just have neat stuff in their boxes. I mean, I bought Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and some other like new games, and they have nothing in them. It's just like the case, the disc, and that's it, and it sucks. Like I miss the days of getting cool posters, which has ads for a bunch of other games in there, including, so you got Nigel Mansell's IndyCar, or Mansell's, the original Mortal Kombat, and I have the cart of Mortal Kombat 1 for the Super Nintendo, and you know what? The input is a bit laggy, like there is a delay in the way that the game plays, and they did take out the blood, but I still like this version more than the Sega Genesis version. And everyone says, oh, well, the Genesis version has blood, but you have to know what the cheat code is to get that blood. So if you think that the stripped down fatalities are, you know, kind of lame in the Super Nintendo version, play the Genesis version without the blood code, and Sub-Zero's fatality, instead of like freezing you and shattering you, which makes sense for his character, is just an uppercut that takes you out of the screen, the enemy out of the screen, and then he falls back down. Johnny Cage in this one, at least, you know, he does stick his foot through your chest, even though there's no like blood or anything. In the Genesis version, he just does his shadow kick, and you fly out, and the enemy flies off the screen. So, you know, I know that, you know, the Mortal Kombat for the Super Nintendo is not perfect, but I love it. I'm glad that I have the card of it, and I still think it's better than the Genesis version. And of course, we got Mortal Kombat 2, which was amazing on the Super Nintendo because it did have all the like the blood and everything back in there. And the original NBA Jam. So I actually had all three of these games at one point. I did not have Maximum Carnage, unfortunately. Would have liked to have had that one. The Itchy and Scratchy game, I completely forgot about that. Virtual Bart, and Champions World Class Soccer. Not really a soccer person, so not too worried about that. But it is cool to have like the poster in there, and then we got the cart, which again, a little bit of discoloration between the front and back sides. And what that is, I think it's just based on the fact that back in the day, the plastics were highly flammable, so they would mix in a chemical to like a fire retardant to prevent you know, the things from just catching fire and going up like a candle, or like a Roman candle, I should say. So like the original Super Nintendo, you see a lot of them that are yellowed on the top, and that's because they had too much of that chemical in there. And all it does is stain the system. I think the Super Nintendo that I have is still the normal gray, so I think it was probably a later one. Anyway, let's move on to the next game here, which is Donkey Kong Land. This is for the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, and it's also compatible with the Super Game Boy, which was something for the Super Nintendo. You plugged it in, you plugged your Game Boy game into it, and you could play your Game Boy games on the television, which is really cool. So I got this for Christmas a long time ago. This is my original copy. And we'll just slide everything out here. So I don't think this one, a lot of Game Boy games used to come with plastic covers, and I don't think this one did. I think it was just in a bag. But anyway, we have the yellow cart, and that's just what an original Game Boy game looked like. And then we've got all the stuff that came with it. So like I said, this one is definitely complete. And it's got just another one of these ads here. Let's have a quick look at it. I mean, why not? I know this isn't what I normally do on my channel, but I thought it'd still be cool to just kind of look at some stuff during the old Play It Loud days. So this was 1990s Attitude. And on the back, just got some advertisements here for some different Game Boy games. So there's Space Invaders, which I guess if you plugged Space Invaders into the Super Game Boy, it actually unlocked like this. It had this same graphic styles as the Super Nintendo version, I think. I remember seeing something about that, and it was really, really interesting and really kind of cool that they had that. And this was one that was Super Game Boy compatible. Metroid 2: The Return of Samus. I have this on my Nintendo 3DS. I also have Kirby's Pinball Land on my downloaded on my Nintendo 3DS, and Donkey Kong. So this came sort of at the same time as the Super Game Boy, and it was the one that was meant to show off how awesome the Super Game Boy was. I have this downloaded on my Nintendo 3DS. But back in the day, I owned Donkey Kong and Kirby's Pinball Land as physical games. Kirby's Dream Land, which I have on my Kirby compilation for the Nintendo Wii. Zelda Link's Awakening. This game is amazing, and I have a physical copy somewhere. The cart is French though, because I went on eBay and wanted to get a copy of it. I had a Game Boy Advance for a while before it broke, and I only paid like $10 for it, so I got my $10 out of it. But I ordered a copy of Link's Awakening, and when I got it, it was French. I did play through it, and I beat the game in French, so I was amazed by how much I remembered it. But again, just really cool, and like I said, I just miss stuff like this not coming in with the games anymore. And just the last thing, we got the manual, which is always really cool to go through. The challenge for Donkey Kong. So the story behind this is interesting because Cranky Kong in the Donkey Kong Country games was always very fourth wall breaking. And he said that, basically the reason that Donkey Kong was so successful on the Super Nintendo was because of all the fancy graphics. And he's like, I don't think you'll be able to, be as successful if you strip away all those fancy graphics. So that's the explanation, is that Cranky Kong took away the 16-bit graphics and all the colors and put them on the Game Boy to see if he could still be like a true hero, which is interesting. It's definitely interesting. What's really cool about this game is it's really hard, and it's not necessarily the greatest game, but it uses a graphic style similar to the Super Nintendo version. So the graphics do actually look really nice on the Game Boy. And I actually have a copy of this downloaded on my 3DS as well. I have all three of the Donkey Kong Land games. So I'm not going to put this back in the box. I'm going to kind of move on. Next one I want to show off here is Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. This is for the Game Boy Advance. This is complete, but nothing really came with this. What's really cool about this one is I have Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance on the GameCube. And what's cool about this version, and I really want to be able to go back and finish it, but it uses a graphical style like with 3D rendered models done as 2D sprites. So like the graphics actually look really nice, and it feels a bit more like a role-playing game compared to the GameCube version. Like, you actually have to find where the store is in Baldur's Gate. So it's, you don't talk to the shopkeeper in the Elf Song Tavern like you do in the GameCube and the home console version and just access his shop from the tavern. You actually have to find where he has his shop. And so this is all that came with these, and this is what the Game Boy Advance cartridge looks like. It didn't come with any like dust protectors or anything, and it just has a little pocket there that you slide it into. And then you've got just the manual, which I believe this one's all black and white. But this is a really cool version of the game, and I think that is something that I think the characters, the only difference between them, I think, was just the colors, if I believe, of their attire. So that was a little bit disappointing, but it's still a really, really cool game, and I want to be able to play that again. So I need to find a Game Boy Advance or something so I can actually play this again. So you saw all these in the thumbnail, but there's 3 more games that I have that I want to show that are in the box. and they're all based on my favorite video game franchise of all time, The Legend of Zelda. So let's start off with the original Legend of Zelda. So this is the classic SNES, or not SNES. This is the classic NES series for the Game Boy Advance. They released several of these games, which are ports of the 8-bit NES games directly onto the Game Boy Advance. So they had like Super Mario Brothers. They had this. They had Castlevania, and I think Metroid was in the first run. And then they did a second run that all I remember is that it had Zelda 2, Link's Adventure, or The Adventure of Link. So just have a look at the box here. And what's really cool about this is that it has like the old style, like this is how video game boxes looked for the NES. So the pictures actually had the rounded corners to look like a television screen at the time. So it's really, really cool. And so this is the original Legend of Zelda. I didn't even have a Game Boy Advance. I just wanted to own this because I thought it was, you know, I loved the Zelda games, and for me this was sort of like a no-brainer. So this one has like an actual paper sleeve that comes out, and we got the game itself, and I do hear a little bit of shaking in there, so I hope that maybe that's just normal. Okay, it's probably just normal. I didn't notice it with the other game, but yeah, there's a little bit of a rattle in there. But again, I don't think I've ever actually plugged this into a Game Boy Advance or anything, so that's probably just the way that they are. And oh, here we go, Donkey Kong. All right. Oh, maybe it's just 3 games. Okay. But this is the classic, so a little ad insert. So this is where the first 3. So Donkey Kong, Metroid came out the same time as. So the second run was Metroid, Castlevania, and Zelda 2. But you know, it has the original sort of box art, and oh, geez, there are a whole bunch of these actually. Wow. This came out years and years ago, so you'll have to forgive me for not remembering. 2004. The Zelda one's the only one that I really wanted. You just have some other stuff here. So I have an ad for the Game Boy player for the Nintendo GameCube. I had this with my original GameCube, and I lent it to my ex when she was sick, and it mysteriously got stolen, according to her. Which I believe what ended up happening is she probably ended up selling it and keeping the money for herself. But anyway, that really sucks because I had that, and I had Super Mario Advance, which was like the version of Super Mario World, and I had the one that was Super Mario Brothers 3, and I also had the Sonic Gems collection for the GameCube. So I lent her all 3 of those with my Game Boy Advance player, and I never got it back, which really, really sucked. The manual, this one's in black and white, and I don't remember if the original was black and white or not. I don't think it was. I think the artwork in the original was in color. But again, these were sort of like a reproduction. Well, not reproduction, but it was just a port. So, you know, I'm not too worried about, you know, like not being in color. But that's what came with that one, which is really cool. Up next is the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. So this is player's choice, which means, you know, million copy seller, cheaper price point. I think it was only like 20 bucks. So this is a updated version of A Link to the Past, and it's pretty much the exact same as the original Link to the Past, but they did do things like add sound effects, like Link will make noises when he swings his sword, like he does in all the more modern games. Some people didn't like that. I honestly didn't find a problem with it. I thought it was perfectly okay. It also includes 4 Swords. And so 4 Swords is a multiplayer game. You have to play with multiple Game Boy Advances in order to actually use this. So I've never had the opportunity to play this version of the game. I really would love to. I kind of wish there was a way to do it single player. But, you know, it is what it is. So let's just pull everything out here. And I guess all that came with this one is the game. And this one doesn't have the rattling sound, so that's kind of making me nervous now. But we got the game, and you just have the manual here. Now this manual is all in full color, which is really great. So you got all the stuff there. So again, this is just, really, really cool. Love Link to the Past. It's not my favorite Zelda game, but it's definitely up there. It was a fantastic game, and so when I... Whoops. Well, now it might rattle. So when I bought my Game Boy Advance player for the GameCube, the first thing I did was I bought this, I think, along with it. And then I went and bought Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, and yeah, got to play Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance a little bit, and then I lent it out, and that was it. So this video's gone, a lot longer than I expected to. I like reminiscing about these old games and looking through everything, but this to me is the main event. So this is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This is the Game of the Year edition. Came out in 1999, which is when I bought this game. So with my N64, similar to what happened with my GameCube, although it was with a different X, I lent her my N64 with all the N64 the games that I had except for this one. And she had 2 kids, and even after we broke up, her kids liked playing the N64, and I had my GameCube and I had my original Xbox at that time. I don't have my original Xbox anymore, but I just said, you can keep it here for now, let them play it for a bit, and I'll get it back, in a couple of weeks or so. And similar, it got stolen, is what she said, and I think basically either she just kept it for herself, or she sold it. And it really, really sucks because I had my box copy of Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which was the first print run of that game, which had the holographic label. And so upset that that happened because her daughter loved the Zelda games and had already played Ocarina of Time. So that's the only reason that I didn't have that included in there, was because that game had already been played and she only wanted to play Majora's Mask. But I have this. This is my original copy. I got it for Christmas of 1999. And I haven't opened this since I lost my original N64, which was back in 2003. So we're at 15 years now since I last opened this box. And I've noticed a couple of things. It's got like these weird sort of green marks on it. And I don't know if it's just like the coloration of the sort of like the metallic looking paint or ink that was used. Maybe oxidized a bit. I have no idea. But so that sort of happened. But overall, I still consider this to be a pretty decently, conditioned box, considering that it was packed away for a long time. Packed away in a box with other stuff. So, this has been 15 years since the last time I opened this up. Just have Link on the side there. Got the Legend of Zelda stuff on the back. The game pictures. Really, really cool looking. So, I'm interested to see how everything's held up inside of here. So, I got the manual. And again, looks like there were some spots on there as well. I don't think it's mold. I can't see it being mold, but there are some spots on there, and they're kind of going greenish as well. I mean, it was stored in a dry place, so I can't imagine it being mold. It could just be oxidization. Anyway, but we got the manual here. And this is one of my favorite games of all time. As time's gone on, I started to like Majora's Mask a little bit more because of just how unique it was. But this is still one of my all-time favorite games. I still try to play through a version of this once every year or two. And I've probably beaten Ocarina of Time, I'm going to say at least 40 or 50 times by now. I have the 3DS version. I have the GameCube compilation disc, which has this and the Master Quest. I have the other compilation disc, which has Ocarina of Time on it. The only version of Ocarina of Time that I don't have is, interestingly enough, it's just the Virtual Console version. So anyway, so let's open this up and have a look at the game cartridge itself. So this is the N64 cartridge. Looks like a little bit of fading on the label, but it's not too bad. And I think, or maybe that's just the way the label's supposed to look. It looks like there's a little bit of dirt on there from way back, and it's like 20-year-old dirt on there now. This could be where there is the wearing. I'm actually just thinking it could be from where I was putting the cartridge in and pulling it out. This is what the old N64 games look like. again, it's just really cool. So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry this ended up being a much longer video than I thought it was going to be, but this is a huge trip down memory lane for me. And yeah, so like so this is the first time I've held this cartridge in my hands for 15 years. And I thought, why not do it on camera? So let me know in the comments below. Obviously, you know, I'm not a huge video game collector, but I'm happy with like the box, you know, old school games that I have. But let me know in the comments below what you guys have. What are some of your favorite, you know, home console games from back in the day? Do you have any, you know, box games that, you know, you've had for forever and just haven't touched in a while? And let me know how some of your games have held up. Like I said, there's a little bit of fading on the label there. I don't know how it's going to show up on the camera, but I think it's just from handling the cartridge and putting it in and out of the system. So anyway, there you have it. So again, let me know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite video games? What are some of your favorite things that you remember being included in your video game boxes? You know, like the posters, or, you know, what are the things that you loved about the old school games? Anyway, I'm going to cut it off here. Thank you guys very much for watching. I know this isn't what I normally do, and next week I will be back to just doing normal videos. But I just, again, to me, this was just something that I thought would be a fun idea to do. So again, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.